dye materials, I'm going to prepare a pot with about 3 cups of water. So I have about 3 cups of water, and I'm going to pour it into my pot and put that on the stove so that it could heat up. And then we'll add the dye materials to this water. While my water is heating up, I am going to use red cabbage as my first natural dye material. So I have a half of a head of a red cabbage here. It's cutting a half, and I'm gonna just cut them up and cut it up into some good size chunks. So the portions, the size of each chunk should be about 1 inch, 1.5 inches thick. Okay, so the best way for me, I realize, because cabbage is so hard to cut through sometimes, is to just slice it like that, flip it over, and I'm getting it like approximately, it doesn't have to be exactly 1 inch, but about 1 inch cuts this way horizontally, and before I did it vertically, so about 1 inch. See, each piece is about 1 inch thick. It's okay if it's a little bit bigger like that, it's totally fine. So I'm gonna cut these up, and the pit is okay to add as well. So I'm just cutting my cabbage. Nothing goes to waste, so all this stuff is good. Now the pit doesn't have a lot of color, so it's not really necessary to add it, but you know, I just maybe cut off some of it so that it's easier, and that way it will kind of fall apart easier in the pot as well. So I'm just slicing up a half of a head of a cabbage, and these are some pieces that were that fell off earlier, so I'm just gonna chop them up, coarsely chop them. Doesn't have to be anything like super pretty, because they're gonna be cooking in your pot for a little while. So just chop everything up, even the dry bits that we would normally get rid of if we're gonna eat them. You can actually include that for this, because the fun is we're not gonna eat this. But I mean, if you are, you could actually take this and make a cabbage stew afterwards. So if that is your plan, which I think I'll do next time, I will clean off the harder dried up bits on the outside before cutting it up, and then just slice that little core out again. There's a little bit left on it, but it's not a big deal. Chop it up, and then we'll get that ready to go into the boiling hot water. So I can tell that my water is ready. I can see that there's a lot of steam coming out of it. So it's basically ready to go. And so then I'm just gonna open up my pot. This one is like a nut. It's heat-proof handle, but if you don't have one that's a heat-proof handle, make sure you use some gloves. And now since my water is ready, I'm going to go ahead and put my cabbage in the water. See, it's all full up. Make sure you turn it down to a medium heat, and we're gonna leave it to simmer in the pot for a little bit. Use a nice wooden spoon so it's not something that will be stained, and just make sure that it's submerged, that the water is fully submerged, the cabbage is fully submerged in the water. I can already see that the water is changing colors. So we'll leave that to simmer on very low heat for about 20 to 30 minutes. So next I am going to prepare some turmeric to use for my dye again. I'm gonna cut them up about this much. It's gonna be nice and thin. I want to get some really good thin slices. It looks like carrots when you cut on the inside, but it's pretty yellow. You can probably see my fingernail is getting already a little yellow. So about this size with 3 cups of water. So 3 cups of water and about a small to medium piece of turmeric. If you have a tiny piece, sometimes they're a little bit smaller. So if you have a tiny piece, just do like 2 of them. Put that flat on the board, hold it firmly with your hands. I like to tuck my fingers in. That's like the restaurant chef trick. Keep your hands steady on the board for this so there's not a lot of movement, and just slice away. And you're doing really thin slices. You can see how thin my slice is. You don't need to make it super perfect, you know, because like we're not in a restaurant and it's not going to be judged by Anthony Bourdain or some kind of top chef, Tom Colicchio. But yeah, this size is enough. Cut the whole thing up. Once you cut the whole thing up, you'll have about this much thin slices. Put them in a pot with boiling water. Turn the pot down to simmer and let it simmer for a good 20 to 30 minutes. Turn it off, let it cool, and sometimes you need to let it sit in it overnight to cool. And once it's cool, then you can strain it off in a strainer and just sit it aside. You can store it in your refrigerator for a long time and use that to color paper or fabric.